pictures with iPhone. They say the best camera in the world is the one that you have on you. And so today we're going to show you how to take your iPhone photo skills to the next level. We want you to see photography in a whole new way, using lighting, exposure, and some other amazing photo editing features on your iPhone to create lasting memories. We want to make sure that you are ready to capture every photo opportunity like a pro. So let's get started. The first thing you want to do in preparation for taking your shot is make sure that you clean your camera lens regularly. It's something that most of us don't do often enough, and so always make sure that you wipe down the camera lenses with a soft cloth or even gently on your shirt. Now we're going to be talking about a lot of amazing things today. Things like composition, colors, patterns, symmetry, looking at the angles of how we take a shot. And so I've got a couple of examples to get us started. I'm going to tap on my Photos app towards the top of my screen, and I've got an album that I've prepared for us. Here we go, course examples. So we're going to be referring to some of these throughout the lesson, and as an example to start us off with, let's talk a little bit about a photo like this. This is a great example of symmetry and balance in your shot. How important it is to make sure that things are lined up correctly. So one, from the point of view of composition and angles, you can see that we don't always have to take a picture of something straight on. By experimenting with the angles from above, from below, we can get really interesting results. And by making sure that things with certain types of patterns are well balanced in the shot, we create something that's very pleasing to the viewer. We also want to discuss looking for patterns that are going to bring the eye in closer to really look for that detail. So you look at something like this, and you always have to think, is my subject flattering to the background? Am I taking this picture at an angle that creates something interesting for my viewer to pay attention to? When we zoom in, speaking of patterns, you start to notice why we're paying attention to the detail in the shot. We've got the bricks going in one direction and the cables on the bridge going in another direction. And it's these opposing patterns that make you want to look a little bit deeper into this photo. So those are just some examples to get us starting to think about how we can take our photos in a slightly different way going forward. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to swipe down in the middle of my screen, takes me back to my photo library, and then from the bottom of my screen, I'm going to give a big swipe up, take me back to my home screen. Before we start taking any pictures today, let's open up the camera application and see what features are present on the interface. So I'm going to go up into the top right corner. I'm going to tap on the camera icon. Now, depending on the phone that you're running and the software that you happen to have, you might see a couple of different features. I'm using the iPhone 11 Pro, but just about every iPhone you use will have very similar features on the screen. So let's get started. On the top left, we have my flash icon. If I give it a tap, it tells me that flash is now off. One more tap and it's back on. But it doesn't mean that flash will fire for every single shot. The phone is using an auto flash system. Therefore, it won't fire the flash off for every single photograph. It will only use it when it needs it. In the top right, there's a couple of circles. If I give that a tap, it tells you live off. If I tap it one more time, it says live. This is something that we call live photos, which we'll be exploring in a few moments from now. If you have an iPhone 6S and onwards, you can use live photos on your device. In the center is, of course, my viewfinder, where I can line up my shot and find the perfect photo. And then at the bottom of that are three numbers, 0.5, 1x, and 2. That is telling me that my iPhone 11 Pro has 3 camera lenses. And if you've got a phone such as the 8 Plus or the 10S, then you have multiple lenses on the back. That means that you can tap on those numbers to switch between the lenses of your camera, to switch between them. So if I tap on 2, it's my telephoto zoom lens, and I can get even closer to my subject. Tap on 1, I'm back to my wide camera, which every iPhone has. And now on the new 11 and 11 Pro and Pro Max, we have ultra wide, the 0.5. If I tap that, I can stay exactly in place and get more of the scene in front of me in my shot without having to move around. It's really, really convenient. Push back on 1 and I'm back to my wide camera. Just under those numbers are a whole bunch of words. If I slide left and right along those words, I can change modes of the camera. So if I swipe to the right, I'm on video, and now I can capture some video with my iPhone. Swipe back to the left, and I'm on photo. And you'll see that there's other modes, portrait and pano, which we'll be exploring later in the session. At the bottom of my screen, I've got 3 icons. Bottom left will take me to my most recent photograph. It's a quick and easy way to review the photo that you've just taken and see if you'd like to take another one. Then at the bottom in the middle is the big white button. That's the shutter button that helps me capture the shot. And then in the bottom right, those arrows turning in a circle turns on my front camera, so I can take a selfie if I'd like to. So now before we even take one picture together, let's swipe up from the bottom or touch your Touch ID button and go back home. And what I'd like us to do is go into our settings. So tap on settings and scroll down until you reach camera. Tap on camera under settings and look right at the top. There's an option for something called grid. Mine is currently off, and if yours is off too, tap on. Now the grid is on. This is going to help us with what we spoke about right at the beginning, composition, and something called the rule of thirds. So let's swipe up from the bottom, go back to our home screen. And now I'm going to go back into my camera application and look at the interface now. I have lines across my screen making a grid. But as we mentioned, it's all about something called the rule of thirds. And if you look, I now have a left, middle, right, top, middle, and bottom. This grid allows me to line things up in a way that photographers say is more pleasing to your viewer. So instead of lining something up directly in the center, and yes, if there's very symmetrical patterns, it might be okay, but in general, having somebody stand right in the middle of a shot might not be that pleasing to the eye. Instead, what you want to do is use something called the rule of thirds and line things up so that thirds of the screen have more weight with regards to where your subject is sitting. So for example, the 2 statues on the right-hand side, I want to fill up more of the right-hand side of my screen with those statues. I can even use the blocks that are being made by the grid and position a subject like the pot plant in the bottom left grid to make sure that it becomes a point of focus. I can also use these columns that are being created to line up symmetrical objects. For example, the Empire State Building and the Statue of Liberty next to each other. I can make sure that each one is perfectly balanced in a column. What's also very convenient about the grid lines is that where they intersect, they cause a cross. I can then use the cross to focus on something that needs to be important in my shot. So for example, the metallic part on the Empire State Building or the flames of the Statue of Liberty. I can also use these grid lines to make sure that my shot is not tilted and that I get a nice straight shot. So by simply using these grid lines and lining things up nice and straight, you can ensure that you get a straight shot. So let's now talk a little bit about our first photo technique, and that is going to be live photos. What's amazing about live photos is that it takes a moment just before and after your image to create a small memory that you can relive by just simply touching the photograph. So it records a 1.5 seconds before and after the still image, and you can do some pretty amazing things. So watch this. If you are taking a photo, and let's say there is some moment that is happening on the screen, and then at some point you decide to click and take the photograph with the white button. Now that you've captured the photo, let's tap on the image in the bottom left. As you can see, it takes you straight into the shot that you just took. But if you look in the top left, it says the word live. This means that if we apply pressure to the screen, we get to relive this moment in its entirety. Let's give it a try. So what's amazing about live photos is it not only captures the motion, but it will also capture sound as well. So you can truly re-experience your memories in the most amazing way. But let's say you're reviewing your live photo and you feel that there's a moment that could be a better still image, or perhaps something was a bit blurry as you snapped the picture, or maybe even someone was closing their eyes. Well, here's what you can do. Tap on Edit at the bottom of the screen. This takes you into your editing area, and we're going to be covering editing in full detail at the end of the session. But right now, let's look at the bottom left. You've got the word cancel, and then those live photo circles. Give them a tap, and it shows you underneath the picture all the moments that were captured as part of this live photo. If I swipe that white frame underneath left and right, I can choose a different moment for my still image. So perhaps there's a moment that I prefer, or as mentioned, maybe a moment where someone's eyes aren't closed, or just about anything you can imagine. all I need to do is swipe left and right and pick my favorite moment. As soon as I let go, it asks me if I'd like to make that the key photo, and if I tap that, that is now the new still image that I can enjoy as a photograph whenever I want. I'm going to tap on done in the bottom right, and all the motion is kept in place, including the sound, of course, as well. Now let's take this a step further. When it comes to a live photo, because there's a lot of motion that's been captured before and after, you could do a couple of really great things. Anywhere in the center of your screen, swipe up. And you'll notice you now can apply live photo effects. So for example, I can create a loop, and the action can loop on itself over and over again. So this is really quite fun. Another type of effect we can apply is I can swipe up and I can make a bounce. A bounce will reverse the action and play it forwards and backwards. So just imagine the possibilities and the fun that you can have here. The last option we have when swiping up is long exposure. Long exposure isn't going to work perfectly in this kind of situation where there is a moving hand, as it will blur it. And why is this? Well, what long exposure is doing, to put it simply, is it's taking all the frames of motion and stretching them into one long-lasting photograph. So imagine now if you were to take a picture of fireworks in the sky, or even water flowing in a river or a waterfall. It would freeze all that motion and give you a beautiful effect, for example with fireworks, of a light stretched across the sky. So as you can see, the possibilities for live photos are amazing. I'm just going to swipe back and go to live, and it will apply the live photo effect one more time, which means I have to press and hold my finger on the screen for the motion to start from beginning to end. Now remember, we never actually left the camera application all this time. I tapped on the image in the bottom left, which allowed me to go into the photo that I had just taken to review it. If you end up reviewing your photo and say it's not exactly what you want, you're still in the camera app. Just a simple swipe down and you're right back to where you started to carry on taking photos. So now that we've taken a photo together, let's talk a little bit about zoom. Zoom is a very important thing to discuss when it comes to taking photos, as sometimes we might want to get a little bit closer or even further away from our subject. And in fact, one of the best ways you can do this is the way that I'm doing it now, by taking a few steps closer or further back. The reason is, if we pinch in and out on our screen to get closer to the subject, we're not actually zooming. What we're doing is making the picture bigger on our screen, therefore expanding the pixels and sometimes losing picture quality. So instead, we've got those numbers at the bottom, 0.5, 1x, and 2, indicating multiple camera lenses. And if we tap on them, we get to actually use the optical zoom capabilities of the phone to get really, really phenomenal photographic techniques. Tap on 1, and I'm right back to my wide camera, and tap on 0.5 ultra wide, just like we discussed a little bit earlier on. Now if I go between those numbers, between 0.5 and 1, between 1x and 2, or over 2, I'm now using digital zoom. Now thankfully the iPhone has incredibly advanced software, and the two can work together, the lenses and the software, to give you really, really great results. So for example, if I push on 2, yes, I'm using the telephoto lens and I'm a bit closer, but now I can hold on 2, and I can slowly start to slide to get even closer to my subject. This allows me to retain the quality without having to worry about expanding the size of the pixels. So the thing you want to remember here is make sure that you take this nice and slow, especially if you've got multiple lenses. Hold on those numbers and just slide left and right. This will allow you to get the perfect amount of zoom and focus on your subject without losing quality. Because the iPhone is so advanced in terms of the way that it sees its subject, thanks to incredible hardware and software, we can take on many of our devices what's called portrait mode. So what is a portrait shot? Well, this is when the subject is beautifully clear and focused in the front, and the background gets soft and blurry behind your subject. So let's swipe over to portrait and see how easy this is. And the great thing about it is that the phone is going to guide you. So I'm going to go over to portrait and let's give this a shot. Now, if you are too close to your subject, it will actually advise you to move further away. The same thing is going to happen if you are too far away. It will tell you that you need to place the subject within 2.5 meters. So if you're too close or too far, don't worry, the phone is going to help you take a great portrait shot. All I need to do is move a little bit further back until the phone can recognize the difference between my subject and the background, and then take a shot. And just like that, if I tap on the bottom left, you'll notice what has happened. The phone is able to distinguish between your subject in the front and the background, and it can blur out that background beautifully, making sure that there's a lot of attention and focus on just the front. This happens automatically, as you saw. To really appreciate portrait mode, take a few pictures of someone's face. That will really highlight the power of this feature. So to look at this example in more detail, I'm going to swipe up from the bottom. I'm going to go back into my photos, and I'm going to go into some of those examples we were looking at a little bit earlier, and let's try a picture like this. Beautiful portrait shot where our subject is nice and focused in the front, and the background is soft and blurry behind them. It just makes the picture look really incredible. What's more incredible, though, is that you have the ability to edit the lighting on your subject with something we call portrait lighting. So I'm going to go and tap on Edit in the top right, and you'll notice underneath my picture, I've got a yellow icon. If I press and hold it, it shows me that that is the natural light that the phone picked up at the time of taking this portrait shot. But if I swipe once over to the left, I can apply studio lighting on my subject's face. I can then swipe over one more time and apply contour lighting and give it dramatic highlights and shadows. I can even do something really incredible by swiping over again called stage light. I can get rid of the background and just focus on my subject. And if you want to apply something maybe even more dramatic or artistic, you can apply stage light mono lighting effect. This is beautiful, giving you that classic black and white look to your subject. So all you ever need to do is hold those icons and slide between them for the different lighting effects on your subject. I'm going to push on cancel on the bottom left and try this on another picture. Once again, you can see that immediate distinction between your subject in the front and the background. Absolutely amazing. But now let's tap on Edit in the top right. Hold that yellow icon underneath for natural light, but swipe over for studio light, for contour lighting, highlights and shadows, and even stage light. The iPhone can easily distinguish between your subject and the background, giving you amazing lighting results. Let's swipe back and put it right back to our natural light. I'm going to push cancel on the bottom left. And in fact, let's explore that photo that I took of the pot plant. I'm using the iPhone 11 Pro, and therefore there's a couple of other features that I'd love to talk to you about today. So seeing that I took this photo on the iPhone 11 Pro, there's a couple of wonderful features that I'd like to highlight to you. So I'm going to tap on Edit in the top right, and let's discuss a few of the things that are now available to us thanks to the capabilities of the new iPhones. If you look in the top left of my screen, you'll see a yellow icon is highlighted, showing me that I am on my lighting controls at the moment. And if you look just under the picture, I've got those same icons from before. Press and hold, and I have natural light, even studio light, contour light, and so on, right? We of course remember stage light, and even stage light mono. Look how great it even looks on an object. But one of the new lighting capabilities on the 11 Pro and Pro Max, and even the new iPhone SE 2020, is something called high key light mono, the ability to flush out a bit of an ordinary background with beautiful white light and change the way your subject looks completely. Absolutely remarkable lighting techniques. So you can choose just about any lighting that you want, and then using the ruler underneath, adjust the level of that lighting. Let's look back up in the top left one more time, and next to that yellow icon, there's something that says f4.5. This is the depth of field, the level of blur in the background of your shot. So let's give that a tap, and we can adjust the type and level of blur that we see behind our subject. You'll notice I now have a ruler underneath saying depth. Well, this is what we call depth control, and if I slide over to the side and increase the number, you can see that I've brought the background into focus. I can now see all the things that are behind my subject the way that I probably saw it in real life. But if I swipe the other way, I get to softly blur out the background, and I can make it more and more intense, just depends on the look I'm trying to achieve. Absolutely incredible. So as you can see, you have a lot of control when it comes to portrait shots. Whether it's the lighting or even the depth of field, you can change just about anything you want, and you can give your portrait shots that high-end professional look. I'm going to tap on Done in the bottom right, and there's our final result. So now I'm going to swipe up from the bottom, go back to my home screen, and I'm going to go back into the camera. So we can talk a little bit about focus and lighting, or exposure as it's called. Now the great thing about the iPhone is that it has autofocus built in, meaning if there's too much light, notice how it automatically adjusts. So it's going to adjust the focus of the shot and the lighting as needed. But what's great is that you can set the focus and lighting by tapping where you want. So let's try an example to talk about why this is important. If the iPhone picks up a new subject or any type of motion in the frame, for example, if you're trying to line up a shot and somebody walks in front of that shot, notice how my hand is now in focus and the background is blurry. As soon as I move my hand out of the frame, we can now see the background come into focus again. So you as the photographer have the ability to tap to tell the phone where to focus and where it should take the lighting source from. So if I tap my finger on the right hand side of the screen where there's a lot of light, notice how it adjusts the lighting source and focuses in that place. If I tap back on the left hand side, it adjusts the lighting and the focus one more time. So you have the ability to manually control what happens here, but notice how when I tap to focus and set the lighting, I get that yellow square with a picture of the sun. That means that before I even take my photo, I have the ability to adjust the brightness or the exposure of that shot. Watch. If I tap, I get that picture of the sun. I can now slide my finger up the screen and increase the brightness if I need more light in my shot. Or I can swipe down and take some of the lighting out of the shot. Maybe if I need a bit more highlights and shadows in a slightly different place. So you can get really fine control of the lighting in your shot, or the exposure as we keep calling it, by just tapping and sliding up and down. As soon as you move, however, the phone is going to autofocus. See that big yellow square that appeared a moment ago? So autofocus is always there to make sure that you have the best looking photograph, but sometimes you might want to make sure that the focus and the lighting don't change if your hand moves a little bit, or if something comes into the frame, potentially affecting what the phone is seeing. And so now you can try a really great technique called auto exposure and autofocus lock. How do we do this? Tap and hold on the location that you wish to lock the lighting and the focus in. Press your finger on that location and just keep pressing down. And notice at the top of your screen, AF lock. Now the phone is programmed to give me the lighting source from that side of the screen and also lock the focus so that if something does come into the frame, notice how my hand is blurry and the background stays in focus because I told the phone to lock the exposure and the focus by holding my finger in that spot. Now if I move to a very bright light source, notice how it's not adjusting for the light, it's keeping the light locked in the place that I requested. A really great technique to make sure that your photos always look exactly the way you want them to. The minute you tap anywhere on the screen, the autofocus kicks back in and the phone is back to normal. So now that we've explored that, let's look at another phenomenal feature, and that is panoramic mode. At the bottom of my screen where it says photo in yellow, I'm going to swipe to the left and I get pano. Now what's wonderful about panoramic shots? Well, the iPhone is able to take a wide photo, one long wide photo for you. And by doing this, it takes multiple shots, one after the other, and stitches them together. What ends up happening is you get a shot with a huge amount of detail, dozens of megapixels worth of quality, and all you have to do is rotate your phone to capture the whole scene in front of your eyes. Now the first great thing about panoramic mode is that you don't always have to take it from the left. If you tap on that white arrow, you can take it from the right and start in another direction. So whichever direction you prefer, tap on the white arrow and you can start in that direction. But now how do we take a great panoramic shot? Well, what you want to do is make sure that you don't move your body or your arms. Hold the phone steady with two hands and rotate the phone in your hands. This is going to keep it nice and steady as you take the shot. What's also important is just to keep the white arrow on the yellow line. And so go nice and slow here and keep your eyes on the screen. Tap once on the white button at the bottom and start moving. Now if you move too high up, it's going to guide you that you need to move. If you move too far down, it's going to guide you once again. You tap the white button to stop. And now let's review that photo. As you'll notice, towards the bottom in the middle and towards the top right, we've got some black areas. This is what happens in a panoramic shot if you move above or below that yellow line. So just take it nice and slow, try a couple of different shots and a couple of different angles until you find the perfect result. I think the more you experiment with panoramic mode, the more it will probably become one of your favorite photographic features on your iPhone. So I'm just going to swipe up from the bottom and talk about one of our final photographic techniques, and that is burst mode. Let's open up the camera one more time in the top right. And now we're ready to take a burst shot. But what is a burst shot? Well, this means that you can hold down the shutter button, the white button at the bottom, and take multiple photos per second to capture an exact action moment. So if something is moving fast on the screen and you're trying to capture it, all you need to do is hold down the white button. So anybody with an iPhone XS and below, hold down the button, you'll hear your phone capturing multiple shots and you've taken a burst. If you've got the iPhone 11, 11 Pro, 11 Pro Max, and even the new iPhone SE 2020, when you hold down the shutter button to try and capture an action shot, it starts recording a video. This is a brand new feature called Quick Take Video. Now, what is Quick Take Video? Well, it means that you never have to miss a moment ever again. If you're taking a photo and you want to record a video, just hold down the shutter button. It means you don't have to worry about lining up your shot again for composition. You don't have to worry about how the lighting and the focus are being affected. Instead, as the action starts happening and you're taking a photo, just hold down the button. And if you don't want to keep your finger there and record even longer, swipe to the right. And it's going to hold that recording in place. This is an awesome feature and is definitely going to help you capture those moments in the future. But then how do we do a burst shot on an iPhone 11, 11 Pro and Pro Max, and the new iPhone SE 2020? Well, the second your finger makes contact with the white shutter button at the bottom, immediately swipe to the left. Don't hesitate at all. And as you're trying to capture that action shot, an immediate swipe, and it will capture multiple photos. Let's tap in the bottom left. So now I'm looking at my picture, and if I tap on it, you'll see it says burst 25 photos in the top left. If I tap select at the bottom of my screen, I can now see all the different photos that were taken at the bottom. So all I have to do is slowly scroll along the bottom, left and right, and I can find my favorite action moments. When I find some shots and I'd like to use maybe that exact frame that looks amazing as an action shot, all I do at the top is tap. And notice how there's a blue tick showing you've selected one of the photos. I can also slide one by one, left and right, and pick a new frame. For example, I like that one. Tap again. Slide one more time, try and find a different action shot, and tap one more time. When you tap on done in the top right, it asks you if you'd like to keep everything, all the burst photos that were taken, or just the favorites that you manually selected. In this case, let's just say keep everything so you can always relive that action moment whenever you want. And now from the bottom, I'm going to swipe up to go back to my home screen. Let's finish off our lesson talking about editing. iPhone, thanks to iOS, has always had amazing editing capabilities, and now, thanks to the new features in iOS 13, it is better than ever before. So let's open up the photos one more time and go into those examples we've been speaking about throughout the lesson, and let's just try any one of them as our example to start with. The great thing when it comes to editing is that it's really simple, but really powerful as well. So let's tap on Edit in the top right corner, and I'm at my adjustment page. Now there's lots of adjustment options here. Anything from auto adjustment, which probably is the thing that you want to try 9 times out of 10, because the iPhone software is so advanced, it will give you the perfect image just about every single time. But you can adjust anything you can imagine: exposure, the highlights or the shadows. You can even change the brightness, saturation, and so much more. So let's quickly start at the bottom of the screen there. We've got cancel in the bottom left and done on the bottom right, and there are 3 icons in the middle. The first icon that has a yellow dot underneath it is our adjustment option. So because we're on the adjustment page, it's got the yellow dot to show us that that is the current active editing option. But next to it, there are those 3 gray circles, and that is your filters. If I give that a tap, I can instantly apply a filter by sliding from left to right. So I don't have to worry about putting this into some third-party app or uploading it to some social media site. I can instantly give this the look and feel that I want just with a swipe. And by the way, there's a ruler underneath each filter, allowing you to swipe left and right and change the amount of filter that is being placed on each photo. Really awesome stuff. Next to those 3 circles at the bottom, there is the cropping option, the one just next to done. There is the cropping option. If I give that a tap, I'm now in my cropping section. And it's quite simple. I can just grab those corners from any part of the photo, pull them in the direction that I want, and I can crop in any way that I please. Another great thing I can do is, if you look up in the top right next to that gray circle with the 3 dots, is I can crop based on a certain type of frame. So I can give that a tap, and I can now crop in a square or 16 by 9, any type of frame that I feel that needs to be cropped to. I can just tap a button and make that happen. The other great option that I have available to me as well is, if you look underneath the picture, I can crop at a rotation. So if I need to rotate the picture at a certain angle to give it some type of new look, or if the photo is not straight and I need to straighten it, I can just twist left and right on this ruler at the bottom, and I can make sure that I crop it in the exact way that I need to. I'm just going to push cancel for now in the bottom left and say discard changes. So let's go back then to the editing. Tap on edit in the top right, and as I mentioned, we always end up with adjustments as the first option. We looked that there's a whole lot of different things that you can do, which we'll explore in a few moments from now. But let's try auto. What if you wanted to just make the photo look amazing every single time without a lot of hard work and input from your side? Tap on auto, and 99% of the time, you'll probably find that the results are breathtaking, and you won't believe how iPhone's able to do this. Here we go. Let's tap on the magic wand and look at the results. By the way, underneath each one of the adjustments, you can slide the ruler left and right to change the level of adjustment of each item that you tap. Really, really brilliant. So you've got a lot of control when it comes to the editing. I'm going to say done, and we've got our photo. I'm going to swipe down in the middle of my screen. It takes me back to my photo library, and let's try another example. Let's take this. Now I'm happy with the overall picture. The colors are great, the brightness is fine, everything is okay, except when I zoom in and look at the subject, the most important part of the photo, I'm noticing that the subject has a couple of dark areas. Maybe the clothing feels a little bit too dark, even their face seems like there's a bit too much darkness on it. And so here's what we can do. We can tap on edit once again in the top right. We're on the adjustment page. I can swipe over and look through all the options. And I don't want to adjust things like brightness or exposure, because that will apply to the entire photograph. What I want to do in this case, because I see one area that's a bit dark that I'm not happy with, is I swipe to shadows. What's incredible here is, if you've got a photo that has areas that are too shadowy, maybe somebody under a tree and they're not clear, maybe an area that wasn't getting enough light at the time that you were taking a photo, well, all you do is swipe over to shadows and watch this. Without affecting the brightness of the entire shot, I can swipe the ruler underneath shadows and take away the dark areas that are affecting the photo in the way that I'd like it to look. This is unbelievable. If you think about it, we were over here just before. I can add so much more detail to my subject and make them look absolutely incredible. Look at this, it even applies to the clothing as well that was a little bit dark. And now when we zoom all the way back out, everything looks amazing. The colors and the brightness have all stayed exactly the same, but we can see that subject now looks so much clearer in the shot, and we can enjoy the photo the way we want it to. Let's tap on done in the bottom right, and there we are. One of the final things then that is always going to help you when you are trying to adjust some of the elements in your photo, let's tap on this. And I'm thinking that this photo looks good, but what if the colors could really pop and be a little bit more vivid? Well, I'm going to tap on Edit in the top right, swipe over through my adjustments one more time. You see we always start on adjustments. I swipe over and I get to saturation. And a lot of people are going to get to this point and go, well, it looks like color. So let's swipe that ruler and add a little bit of saturation. And at first it's okay. We get that jersey looking a little bit more red. We get the shirt having a bit more pink color in it. The grass even looks better. But the problem with saturation is that if you go too far on this, look at what can happen. The colors can get completely overexposed, and certain things like skin tone especially can end up looking unnatural. They effectively look burnt pink. It's just not ideal. So saturation is fine, but you just have to be cautious with it. So now you've got the option to either swipe back and turn it to 0, or tap on the number of each one of these effects that you've applied, and it turns it off. It takes it back to 0. I want to swipe over to another feature, and that is going to be vibrance, the one right next to it. What's wonderful with vibrance is that you can increase the level of color, but keep things looking natural. Let's try it out. Going to swipe over. We get more color in the jersey. We get a nice pink detail on the shirt. Beautiful green grass in the background. And even if I fill this up all the way, it now looks so bright and colorful, but the skin tone looks 100% natural. So vibrance is a great tip when you're trying to add a touch of color to a photograph without affecting the natural state of how certain things, especially like skin tone, are going to look. Let's tap on done in the bottom right and swipe down. And those are some of the editing techniques that I wanted to share with you today. If you apply all the things that we've spoken about today and really just experiment, take your time, take lots of photos at each opportunity, you can end up with amazing results time and time again. Just think of some of the things we spoke about today. The rule of thirds, making sure that your subject is not always right in the center, perhaps on the left or the right third of the screen. We spoke about composition, taking your photos at different angles, from above, from below. We also spoke about balance and symmetry, and you can see that here where the skateboarder is moving through the center of the shot. But we also spoke about patterns, and look how the columns of color on the floor seem to make a pattern that not only create great detail to focus on, but they also act as a nice contrast to the lack of color on the skateboarder's clothing. The most important thing to do is go out there, try some of these techniques, and have fun. That's what photography is all about. Seeing the world in a whole new way and capturing those amazing moments. Thanks for listening to this session, and enjoy taking great photos on your iPhone.